Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome to the neighborhood. This is Amy.
Hi.
I'm Michael. And my last name is Port, and Amy's last name is soon to be Port. It's not actually soon to be Port. That'd be a long hyphenated name. But on Sunday, we are getting married. No, not this Sunday.
Sunday the 13th. 10 days.
I'm, what's the expression? I'm jumping the ship.
Oh,
is that right?
Yeah?
No, not jumping off the ship, but trying to get it in earlier. Like I'm trying to do it Sunday. In any event, welcome. We're the founders, of course, of Heroic Public Speaking. Maybe you are already a part of our community. Maybe we've had the opportunity to teach you in some way before. And maybe this is a first time. So maybe this is the first time that you've had any exposure to us.
Amy, so welcome.
Yeah,
Nice to have you here.
Amy is the charming, intelligent, and beautiful one. And I'm the one who lifts things.
Funny.
That's what I do. I just lift up things. So we're going to spend about an hour with you. Now, when we do something live, we never put an about amount of time on it because you don't have control over what you're doing when you're sitting in a theater watching somebody. So you need to know when something starts and when something finishes. When you're doing a webinar like this, your audience has the ability to get up, sit down, go away, come back, or leave when they want to. So we've planned an hour's worth of work with you, and we're going to give you the opportunity to ask some questions as well. And feel free to put your questions into the questions box throughout, and we may take them as we go, or we may hold those until the end. It depends on the question. It's not because it's a good question or a bad question. It's just whether or not we want to answer that question at the time. As we indicated in the email we sent out about this call, or webinar rather, we are going to do a couple things. We're going to introduce you to really public speaking and performance as a path to financial success and personal fulfillment. And we're also going to introduce you to Heroic Public Speaking Live, which is in February on the 15th, 16th, and 17th. There is also a pre-conference day on the 14th, which is something else. We'll tell you about that later. But the main event is the 15th, 16th, and 17th. So we'll give you a link to that now because the price goes up at 7 o'clock tomorrow night.
Friday.
That's right. Tomorrow night. Friday at 7 o'clock, the price goes up by $500. So we want you to take advantage of the earlier price, which is why we did this webinar now. So if you've been on the fence looking at it going, oh, I think I want to do that, but I'm not sure, this is the opportunity to get sure. So the link is heroicpublicspeaking.com/live. heroicpublicspeaking.com/live. Ready to roll?
Let's do it.
Okay. So what do people want? Some people may want to be a professional.
Yes.
Some people may want to speak, to book business.
Others of you may want to share a message. May want to speak not for that financial return, but to share something important that you have to say. Now, making money while doing it probably doesn't hurt either.
Yeah. Maybe you want to fund a company, or maybe you just want to sell more, because what's interesting about training in public speaking is that the work you do there applies to all situations in your life, because anytime you open your mouth, you're speaking in public.
Sometimes we say anytime you're not talking to yourself, you are public speaking.
Although I do talk to myself out loud very often and people hear me. So I think,
does that qualify
when I walk
as
down the
speaking?
street, I think so. I'm speaking in public. I'm not sure anybody's listening.
But
to
all
me.
these circumstances in our lives.
That's right.
All these
So here's the thing. We always want to look at the world as it is now. What's the world look like to you right now as it relates to public speaking? So you may feel like, I'm okay at speaking. I mean, I could be better. I'm not sure if I could be better, but it seems like I could be better.
But I don't know how.
That's right. But I don't know how.
And that often is the crux is, okay, even people who go, I'm a natural public speaker. I'm really quite good at it. Might also say, but if I wanted to pursue mastery, I wouldn't know how.
That's right. Which is interesting because we were very fortunate to have great training as actors. Amy was at the Yale School of Drama, and I was at the graduate acting program at NYU. The name was better at Yale. Ours was a mouthful. But of course, we were so well trained in diction that we could very fluidly. And we were both got our MFAs at the same time, actually, at those two different programs. And we were very fortunate because we had all the training. So when it came time to speak publicly, we knew how to apply that training to the new work at hand. And it's understandable that you wouldn't know how to improve because you've never had that kind of training. So I really get that. And then, of course, there's often anxiety around public speaking, even if you want to do more of it, which is okay. It's perfectly normal to be afraid because, we're afraid of getting rejected. I mean, that's ultimately what most fear is about. If you think about fear as it relates to public speaking, I'm not sure what else we're afraid of besides being rejected. And being rejected means someone told us that we're stupid, that our ideas really weren't worthwhile, that we didn't know what we were talking about, or that
we froze and ran off the stage screaming.
Which has happened to many people. Actually, one of our students in the graduate level program, we also do a graduate level, a very high level program. He was at the event in Florida last year, the live event. Then he came into the graduate program, and he said the first time he had an opportunity to speak publicly, there were 3,000 people in the theater. I'm talking about Amos. 3,000 people in the theater. It was a big event for his company, and he was asked to come on stage, and they called his name, and he saw there was a door to the left, and he ran to the door, opened it, ran out, and disappeared. That's how scared he was. And now he's giving speeches regularly on those kind of platforms without a problem. And he is using those to forward his brand, his message. And he's doing quite well. He was once Amish, and he was excommunicated from the Amish community because he started exploring other ways of being. And he is finishing up a book now, which is a great title, called From Buggy to Benz, because now he's making 7 figures. I think he's doing incredibly well. And I think that's a great title.
And we're so proud of the journey he's taken, because this work is not just beneficial for your bottom line. It's beneficial on deeply personal levels. And that's why we say for, yes, financial success, but also deep personal.
That's right. So what doesn't work? Do you know, because maybe you've tried a little bit of training here, tried a little bit of training there, read some articles online, and body language tricks maybe don't work that well. Body language, the way that you relate to somebody physically, is incredibly important. When you're sitting across the table from somebody, and when you're speaking in front of a large room, but they're not tricks. We were not manipulating anybody with our body language tricks. So we stay away from those kinds of things, anything that is inauthentic or manipulative in any way.
That's right. And part of the reason is that as performers makes us very self-conscious. If I'm focusing on, okay, what are the gestures that I'm going to do while I speak to you? It makes me very self-conscious and therefore inauthentic.
Yeah, and just having better slides is not going to improve your public speaking. In fact, sometimes, very often, our students, and the ones who are the most surprised about this, are our A-lister students, the people who are already making $10, $15, $20, $30, $40,000 a speech. When they come and work with us, they leave slides all over the floor. Not literally, but we had a group of 6 A-listers recently who, one of them, when they were doing a little debrief afterwards, one of them said the thing that he was most surprised about is that there was probably about 1,000 slides that were cut between 6 people over the course of a few days.
Because their performance became so strong that they weren't dependent on the slides anymore.
And we're not anti-slides. The question is not, to use slides or not to use slides. That's not the question. Visuals, still videos, it can be incredibly powerful. but just focusing on visuals is not going to make you a better public speaker and certainly not a better performer. So I don't agree with that. I also don't think it's courses that teach you how to sell from the stage. I think there are probably some good courses that teach you how to sell from the stage. I've never taken one. And I think there is certainly some value in exploring how to do that. But I don't think, for the most part, that focusing on your selling from the stage is what makes you a better performer. Because our job is to serve our audience first and foremost. And if we do that, then they want to come work with us because we produce results, which is very different than organizing an entire presentation around selling so that it doesn't really matter what they learned then. It only matters if they run to the back of the room and buy. So we stay away from that particular approach. And we don't fault anybody for anything else they do. We think there's lots of different ways to do things. But our particular perspective is that it's never about us. It's always about them. And if we go in there and deliver on our promises, then we produce results. And if we produce results, we get approval. And then we book business. So if you want to be a professional, they're not hiring you to come in there and sell from the stage. People who sell from the stage don't get paid to speak generally when they're selling from the stage. Selling from the stage is something you do when you don't get paid to speak.
Often you pay to speak if you're going to sell from the stage.
Yeah. So there are two different schools. And from our perspective, getting better as a performer, voice, speech, movement, content creation, storytelling, connection with the audience interaction, etc. Focusing on the selling part first is not necessarily going to help in those areas as much. So we can get into a long conversation about that. We won't, but I just want you to understand that our focus is not on that. Our focus is on really being best in class as it relates to being a performer. And that's really, really important. I think that just watching others probably doesn't do it either. If you come to Heroic Public Speaking Live, you will participate as an active student doing voice work and movement work and improvisation work, content creation work, and much more. And you will watch other people perform and get coached by us. Now, I say this because you can learn a lot watching other people get coached and perform. Where you make the biggest strides, however, is when you actually perform, when you actually train, when you actually work. It's very difficult to get really good at something just by watching it. So for example, if you want to learn how to play soccer, you can watch. Oh, well, that's really neat how they do that. But I can say, oh, I see what he does there, but I can't go do it unless I have practiced it for 1,000 hours.
Can you imagine watching a concert pianist? Just watching them to see what they do and then thinking we could somehow go out there and do it. We'd never think that. It's the same with public speaking.
And the interesting thing, my love, the interesting thing is that sometimes people resist the training. There's a couple of reasons that people resist training in public speaking in the way that we teach, because doing a little bit here and there, or giving a 2-minute speech here or there, that can be very helpful in many ways. But doing the higher level training, sometimes people resist it, saying, well, I'm not ready. And saying not ready is a product of fear. Well, I'm afraid, so I'm not going to do it because I'm not ready. And I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to do it because I don't think I'm ready. The question is, how do you get ready unless you do the training? So our work with you is about getting you ready to shine when the spotlight's on you. That's what it's about. We don't get ready to get ready.
We don't get ready by waiting. We get ready by taking action that changes the state of where we're at. Mm-hmm. We were just talking about what are the things that don't work, and it begs the question: what are the things that do work?
Yeah.
And the things that work are learning and training, doing exactly what you're saying, doing the training that highly trained professional actors know, and then applying it to your public speaking. So if you're thinking, I'm not ready, all it is that you're not yet doing the training. That's what that means.
And then, sometimes people say, well, it's going to be too high level. It's too high level. I'm not ready for the high level training yet, because I'll use the phrase high level training. And they'll make the assumption that, well, I'm just a beginner. Obviously, the work that Michael and Amy are doing is to advance for me. And that's not true. It's not true at all. The work we do is with people who have never given a speech before and who are professional speakers giving speeches in the biggest venues. So the work, and here's what's interesting, is that we find the people who make the biggest leaps, the most progress, the fastest, are the people who've never really done a lot of this work. Because the people who've been doing it a long time, they often say, well, I'm a pro. I don't really need to do what I've been doing works. And so sometimes they resist it a little bit. Well, no, I've been doing it this way because of this. And they give them a little more direction. Well, no, I do it this way because of this. But then when you break them down, when we start to break down those walls of perfectionism, like I know what I'm doing. If all of a sudden I realize that I wasn't doing it really well, that means, wait, for the last 5 years, I haven't been good. It's not about being good or bad. Performance is not about you cannot be good. You can be helpful. You can be impactful. You can work to get people to think differently, to feel differently, to act differently. So when we do our postmortem on something like this or an event or a speech, we don't go, oh, we were good or we were bad. We don't do that. We say, what reached them and what didn't? Because if it reached them, then we know we're on the right path. And if it didn't reach them, then we need to go back and figure out what to do to reach them. Because your ideas are only as good as your ability to get other people to consume them. So you might think it's too high level and you're not ready and you need to get ready. And I think that is a false assumption, because the only way you get ready is do the training, which gets you ready to perform. You might think that you're already at such a high level that you can't get any better. And I have yet to meet a professional performer who doesn't continue to train.
Yeah, because when you're a pro of the right mindset, you are in pursuit of mastery. That becomes the exciting thing of the work, not staying in the same place, but saying, how do I master this thing I do that I call public speaking? And so those pros continue to train. So if you see yourself objecting, going, well, I already know some about performance. I did some theater in college, or I already have been doing keynotes. Ask yourself, are you in pursuit of mastery? And
am I in pursuit of mastery?
Am I in pursuit of mastery?
That she said to ask myself. I do whatever she says. She says, do it, I do it. And that's a really great question. So you might say, well, I'm not an actor. And I'm not big and charismatic. I'm not funny. I can't become those things. And that's what somebody who is a performer needs. And the answer is, no. Just like in sales, sometimes they think that the big personality in sales is the person who sells the most. Not the case at all. Sometimes that really big personality is actually way too much and is just sort of blows through whatever environment that they're in. Sometimes the best performers in the world are the most unassuming, quiet, reserved people who save their energy for the stage. And when they're on that stage, they are there to serve the audience, and they focus on connection, because that's what performance is about. And they don't care about trying to be funny, trying to be good, trying to be impressive, trying to be smart. They care about being in service of others as they stand in the service of their own destiny. So those two things are in line. So there is not one kind of personality, one kind of person, one kind of talent that is a great performer. And in fact, we have trained hundreds, if not thousands of people at this point. in just a few years doing this. And there were 250 people at last year's live event. And if you saw all those 250 people speak, you would not see one of them performing like another one of them. You will never be able to see one of our students and go, oh, that's an Amy and Michael Port student. Because there is no one way to perform. What we're doing is we're looking for the individual. We're looking at you and looking at trying to find what is unique about you and how do we amplify that uniqueness? How do we take what's most compelling about you and allow you to develop a character and a style as a performer around that so that the technique is transparent. You don't want to see technique. If you go and watch a performer and you're watching their technique, you don't connect with them emotionally. And what performance is about ultimately is connecting emotionally.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, and also, you know, it's funny. Another one of our students who actually came to the graduate program also after live, Jordan Harbinger, who is the host of Art of Charm, which is one of the biggest podcasts in the world. They get 2 million downloads a month. A month. He said the first time he saw us doing this coaching, he thought it was staged.
He thought we set it up.
Yeah, he thought we took somebody beforehand and worked out what they were going to do that didn't work. And then they would all of a sudden be great. And because he saw such a transformation in such a short period of time, he said, that can't be real. That can't actually happen. And then he saw it again, and he saw it again and again. He goes, oh my God, this is true. Scott Stratton was at last year's event also, is another highly paid working professional speaker. And he said it looks like magic. But what's interesting is that it's not magic. It's experience and it's skill. Mm-hmm. And this kind of work is something we've been doing since we were in our 20s. When you have the kind of training in the background that we do, that's normal, this kind of transformation, because that's the job. It may not be normal to you or to these other people that I just mentioned because they've never been in that world. So we're trying to take you into our world and help you transform quite quickly. That's our goal.
And here's the beauty. In the public speaking industry, the bar is actually quite low. Not to be rude and not to diminish anyone, but the bar is low enough that by making some simple changes, it propels you forward in the industry.
Yeah, right. It really does. So just a few things.
Yeah.
Just a few things. So we are not asking you to become Martin Luther King. I mean, I couldn't speak like Martin Luther King in this lifetime. He was somebody with a gift of immeasurable proportions. And, you know, someone might play the devil's advocate and go, oh no, you're thinking small, Michael, you could. What I'm trying to suggest is that we don't need to compare ourselves to other people that have done things or are doing things that are very far from where we are right now. Because when we compare ourselves in that way, then we diminish ourselves. We start to say, oh, well, I can't do that. And so we have these unnecessarily unrealistic expectations of what we're supposed to do. And so when Amy says the bar is low, that's what she means. She's saying, look, a lot of the speaking you see is decidedly average. And just a few changes in skill level and technique level can put you into best of class. And that's what we can do with you and for you. So, but what happens if you become a heroic public speaker? I mean, what changes? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, certainly you're better at giving speeches, which means you're more confident. Mm-hmm. Because that's the thing that's really interesting is, you know, one of the best ways to reduce anxiety is to really know what you're doing.
Prepare.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, even unprepared, if you know what you're doing as a performer, if you have the technique that you can pull out, then you can still do quite well. So one of the reasons we're nervous is because we don't know what to do. We don't know how to enter the stage. We don't know how to move on the stage. We're not sure where we're supposed to look We're not sure how we're supposed to organize content.
We don't know how to interact with the audience and what's too much or too little. We don't know how to handle Q&A well sometimes and are quite challenged with what people bring to us.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do if we forget a line or where we're going next.
But if you have the training, then you know exactly what to do if you forget what's coming next. So the audience has no idea that you forgot what was coming next. And even if they do, it's totally cool because you have a system, you know how to handle that kind of situation. So do you see more bookings when you are a better speaker? Of course you do. As a professional speaker, do you see your fees going up when you become an entertainer as well as a teacher? You do. Because what we know in the business on the professional side is those who can entertain while they teach tend to get the biggest fees.
That's right.
So what else? Do you get better at dating? What?
Sure.
Huh? What? Did he say date? What?
Sure.
Yes.
Of course.
Of course.
Any first meeting you become better at because your confidence is higher about how you present in public. So whether that's dating or meeting your future in-laws or going on a job interview, all of those first impression, high stakes moments you become better at.
Yeah. And better in bed. You do. Because, listen, someone's going to write in, I can't believe you said better in bed. But think about all the different situations in your life that are anxiety provoking.
Silence.
You know, when we are in a situation that has high stakes, that's intense, that where the outcome is important and will determine the quality of your life, your ability to stay calm, to stay cool, to stay collected, to be strong, powerful, assertive. Gravitas is emanating from all parts of your body. So people go, I didn't know that gravitas could do it, but people go, wow, that is a person of substance. That is a person who stands for something. That is a person who gets on this stage because they have something to say. And they are going to say it because they care about the people in this room. That is impressive. And that is what you can do when you are a heroic public speaker, because it takes courage to do this.
And that is sexy.
And that is sexy.
Point made.
Point well taken. Thank you very much. All right, so listen, there are really 5 pillars of public speaking success. 5.
The first one is Stagecraft.
Yeah.
And this is the work that we did 6 days a week for 3 years in our master's level programs. It's voice work, so that your voice conveys what you want it to the audience, that you are commanding, that you are grounded, that you are a person of substance.
Yeah. If you come to Florida and work with us for 3 days at the Heroic Public Speaking Live event, you will work with Ursula Meyer, who was Amy's voice teacher at Yale. So she was the teacher at the MFA program at Yale, voice and speech, for years and years. Now she is the acting teacher and the voice teacher at San Diego, right?
At UC San Diego.
UC San Diego. Just did a
tremendous program.
She's extraordinary. I just interviewed her for the podcast, and she will be teaching voice. And you'll be in relatively small groups because we have numerous teachers that we're bringing in, and we have an extraordinary space at the Broward County Center for the Performing Arts. And this is a beautiful, so we've rented the whole place. It's ours. We're taking it over. Forget about hotels. No hotels. Let's get into a real theatrical space. And we'll have multiple sessions running at a time, and you go through these tracks. So you'll be in these relatively small groups working with the voice teacher on your feet, working on your voice.
Where else are you going to get to do that? Do you know how many professional actors try to get into Yale and don't? Try to get into UC San Diego or NYU?
With these teachers.
And don't ever get to study with people of this quality. This is one of the few, if not only opportunities you have to work with this quality level teacher outside of those kind of programs. It's extraordinary that they're coming to do this with us.
So voice is such an important part of stagecraft, the way you sound. Mm-hmm. And voice is produced through breath.
Okay, but here's the thing. I have to back up a little bit here because Michael and I met because of voice.
I'll tell the story.
Okay, you tell the story.
Okay, so
talk about high stakes moments.
For some reason,
I'm going to marry.
Do you know that sometimes when we do video, my nose gets itchy?
Does it really?
Yeah, I go like that. I'm like, oh, I can't do that. That's not very good stagecraft. All right, so listen, we met. I don't know what year it was, but we're going to figure out one of these days what year it was. I pulled into the parking lot to pick up my son, Jake, who was in the aftercare program at school. And I got out of the car and I heard a voice from about 90 feet away. And then I turned and I saw the woman who had the voice. So I walked up to her. She was talking to somebody else. And I said, excuse me, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but are you an actor?
Which completely took me off guard because I hadn't been acting for a number of years. And I said, I was.
Yeah, she goes, yes, no, well, I was. And I said, where'd you go to school? Where'd you train? She said, Yale. I said, I knew it. When were you there? And she told me, I said, I was at the grad acting program at NYU at the same time. We had the same agents, except we were on the same auditions. We never met. We would be up for the same types of projects. The reason that Amy mentioned it is because her voice was so powerful that I could tell that she had trained.
And that, at the moment, so took me by surprise. I said, how did you know? I said, I could tell right away by your voice that you have a trained voice.
Yeah.
So talk about high stakes moments. You never know
where that's going to lead. Well, actually, Treb was in, he was at the live event, or was in the Total Immersion program a couple of years ago. And one of the things that he said was remarkable is never, ever in his entire life had the people at Starbucks ever gotten his name right on the cup. But after he did the voice work, just in our Total Immersion course, which was a distance learning course, all of a sudden they got his name right because we were teaching him voice and speech. And it was a whole new world for him. And of course, he's a great presenter and trainer now, teaches technology. He's a Microsoft associate. So there's a lot of cool things he's doing besides drinking coffee, but he was really quite amazed by that. We've had people, Molly Fox's sister, Katie,
yeah.
She came to Heroic Public Speaking. She did the voice work. She went home, and literally the next day, somebody asked her, are you a professional speaker? They were just having a conversation. And she said, why? She goes, because the way you sound so powerful.
See, that's what we're saying. This work has impact fast when you're doing it at the level that we teach it.
When Theo was in our grad program, when I think it was Theo, he had taken one of the earlier courses, and he went to a Toastmasters while he was doing our training. And he went up and did it was Theo. He went up and did he's a neuropsychologist. He went up and did his 2-minute speech. And afterwards, somebody came up to him and said, are you an actor? He said, no, but I am a heroic public speaker. And he said, that's what he was learning. People were getting this experience with these folks that was completely new. Now, Theo is a neuropsychologist. He is not an actor and will never be an actor. And he, through this work, has become a remarkable public speaker. He is incredibly insightful. He is direct. He is funny. All of these things that he has learned as a result of the training. So Stagecraft is such a big part of it. We also, in addition to bringing Ursula in to do the voice work with you, we also bring in Dan Cordell, who was my teacher at the grad acting program at NYU.
Can you tell how much affection and gratitude we have for these people? Every time we say one of their names, we smile and the hands go over the hearts because what they gave us had such profound impact. And that's part of the reason that we are motivated to pass it on to you.
Yeah, and that's the philosophy of in the arts, is that you keep passing on what you learned. And when you find a teacher who speaks to you, when you find a teacher who has what you want and is willing to give it to you without an agenda in a way that is helpful to you, you want to honor them as much as you can. So Dan Cordell, he's a film director and a commercial director, and he is an improvisation teacher. He taught improv for 9 years at the grad acting program at NYU, and he's taught at tons of different universities. And he came last year and was a hit, to say the least. We won't tell you what the big moment was because he might top it this year.
Off the charts.
He's off the charts.
He steals the show.
Steals the show. Everybody loves him. He's just the sweetest guy. He's so insightful. And he will be doing sessions on improvisation with you. So you learn how to handle any situation that comes up when you're giving speeches, how to expand your imagination, the way you see yourself, your ability to play. It's such an extraordinary experience to put yourself into situations that you never knew that you could handle, and to have fun with it, and to play with it, and to be open, authentic, and honest during those kinds of performance situations. And Dan's going to teach that. He's also, and we'll get to this a little bit later, he's also going to teach on-camera work, interview training, and some more, but we'll tell you about that in a minute, because we're focusing on stagecraft. So that's the voice and the improv, and then there's also...
We have movement, and that's another one that you'll be circling through. So you will get all of these. On this first day that is all focused on stagecraft, you do not have to choose between any of these. You get all of it. We divide you up and make sure you get it all. So movement, and the teacher for the movement section is Faye Simpson.
Yeah, and Faye Simpson is right now the movement teacher at the graduate acting program at NYU. So we're just mining all of our, she wasn't my teacher when I was there. We had a different teacher. I was there a while ago, but yeah, so she's phenomenal and very, very well known. And sometimes when you say movement teacher, people go, what's a movement teacher? You know, because we all know how to move around, but moving on stage is very different than just walking to a table, sitting down, then getting up, going to your car. That's a very different kind of movement, understanding how to block a speech. So you decide where you're going to move, when you're going to move there, what your body is telling the audience when you move there, how to express yourself physically so that you are physically alive and connected to the audience and not just a talking head. So movement with Faye is going to be extraordinary. And then also on that first day, we're going to be doing masterclass work with you. A masterclass work we'll do throughout, but especially on the first day in smaller groups. We'll actually do 4 different masterclass sessions where we put people on stage and we coach them, because that's another aspect of stagecraft. It's how you work on the stage while you're rehearsing. So you see the craft, the voice, the movement, and the improvisation realized in those sessions with us. So the things that we're explaining to you now in terms of what you need to know in order to be a very successful public speaker are, of course, also the things that we're bringing to you in February. So you see how we're introducing these important concepts to you, and we're demonstrating that we will deliver them to you in February. So that's the first pillar.
Yes, I want to add something here.
Okay.
Part of the reason we teach you in this way is not just because it's what we will be teaching in February, but because so often we don't know what we don't know. I was having a conversation with a client the other day who said, well, I don't get a sense of like, well, what is it I need to learn? We don't know what it is we don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's part of our purpose here today, is to help you see the vast range of what there is to learn that will transform your public speaking.
And sometimes we need to unlearn some things as well.
And that's, the coaching sessions are good for that too.
Yeah. It's, you know, I think that the more masterful you get at something, the more you realize that you knew less than you thought you did.
Yes. We hear that from our A-listers that Michael was talking about earlier, that in their 3-day session with us, a number of them spoke about coming in the first day thinking, yeah, I'm pretty good at this. And by day 2 went, oh my gosh, I have been deluding myself for years. And by day 3, they went, oh no, it's just adjustments.
Yeah.
And now I see, and now, wow, I didn't know I could transform so much in 3 days.
In grad school, what they did with us is they took us apart and then put us back together. So the first year for us was all about playing games. It was fun. It was mind expanding. It was really fun. Second year was miserable.
They beat you to
They beat you to a pulp. You sucked at everything. You couldn't get it right. You're overtired. You're exhausted. You're overworked. Third year, they put you back together. And by the end of the third year, all the third years, they look great. You know, they're really confident. You're like, oh my God, I'll never get there. And it's just 1 year later, you're going, hey, what's up? I'm feeling really good. And then you go out into the world. So that's what we do, is we help you play fun, understand that there's a lot of wonderful experiences that are to be had for you. Then we'll break it down a little bit, and then we'll put you back together so that you go out into the world and feel confident. So that's Stagecraft. We're also going to do Videocraft. That's number 2. Videocraft is such a big part of our world these days. Streaming,
Hello.
Skype, Periscope, Blab, or some other ridiculous name for some other software that may be here for a month or 2 and then disappear. But nonetheless, we live in a visual age, and performing on camera is slightly different than performing on stage. There's some, what's the word I'm looking for? There's some consistencies across them, but there are some techniques that are different because the medium is different. And Dan Cordell, again, a working director in film and commercials, is going to be teaching you on camera technique. And he directed a film that I was in as well. So I know that this guy is really quite remarkable as a director, in that he can teach you how to interact with the camera so that you're comfortable, so that the camera loves you. And it's really quite fun when you do it with him because it's very playful. So there's staging of video, there are tech elements, there's authenticity, and of course,
a big piece. Authenticity on camera is a big piece, and that is something that Dan is, I think, so uniquely adept at teaching.
Yeah. One of the most authentic people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah. That's Dan Cordell.
If you want to learn a little bit more about Dan, go listen to Steal the Show with Michael Port, the podcast, because I did an episode with him, and you'll fall in love with the guy. He's just extraordinary. You get a sense of, oh, wow, he's going to be one of my teachers. That's pretty cool. The same thing with Ursula. Go listen to the podcast. Go, wow, she's going to be one of my teachers. That's pretty cool. So we've got Stagecraft is 1, Videocraft is 2, and then 3 is content creation.
There's a substantial part of the 3-day live event focused on content creation. When we focus on content creation, we're looking at what are the frameworks that give structure to your content. Because often what distinguishes an expert from a beginner is how well organized the content is. Is it organized in a way that makes it easily digestible, easily rememberable to your audience? So giving it a framework not only makes it easier for your audience, but it also makes it easier for you to remember it as you go through.
That's right.
One of the...
Well, yeah, I'm going to move on and go through them because we have a couple things we want to do, and we're going to be able to take questions. So the frameworks are, as Amy said, are very, very important for the organization of your information. When you organize the information, then you can develop a protocol. So there are frameworks and there are protocols. Protocols are what people actually buy. People don't generally buy ideas, they buy protocols. So when we organize our courses and our events, there's a protocol associated with all the different things we do there. So when we organize the event, 3 days, there's a specific protocol. We take you through this protocol, and at the end of that protocol, you go, wow, I have got a system that I can work through. And that's what people buy. If you want to be a professional speaker, they are buying a system from you. So what are you going to teach? Well, I'm going to talk about marketing, and I'm going to, share some new ideas. And they go, they don't know what to do with that. They say, listen, I'm going to come in and I have a system, and I'm going to teach these 4 modules. And the objective is to achieve this. Now, the way I'm going to do it is first introduce this, 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 and this, because if you do X, Y, and Z, you've got this really well-organized system. That's the next step in your content development. And we do a fair amount of content development work at the live event as well. So remember, we're introducing what needs to be done to be a remarkable public speaker and demonstrating that these are the things we do with you when we work with you. So number 1, Stagecraft. Number 2, Videocraft. Number 3 is content creation. So we've got frameworks and we've got protocols for teaching, and we'll teach you also how to source and sculpt stories. This is essential to be able to identify, well, what stories have I lived? Or what stories exist out there that I can pull into my work, attribute properly, of course, and then sculpt them so that they serve the through line and deliver on the big promise. We do a fair amount of work around that and being able to sculpt the story. We have a very specific structure, a process that you use to mold those stories, to sculpt those stories. Because, we've all heard stories that die on the vine or just go on forever. And you're like, come on, dude, let's go. So rarely is a story ready to be delivered in front of a large audience the first or second time you've told it. Unless you're maybe Jerry Seinfeld. But even Jerry Seinfeld goes night after night after night to small comedy clubs all over New York and LA with his little yellow note, post-it notes, trying out new material because he doesn't know what's going to work until he does it in front of an audience. So frameworks, content creation, use protocols, sourcing and sculpting your stories, and then finally finding and using humor. Oh my God, listen.
We're so excited.
Everybody wants to be funny. And interestingly enough, I'm funnier on stage than in real life.
It's true.
It's true. She tells me I'm hysterical all the time, but it's usually because she's laughing at me. But when you learn how to perform in front of an audience, when you understand timing, when you understand social dynamics, when you understand what makes something funny, then you can exploit that knowledge for an audience, and you can often actually end up being funnier on stage than you might be in your regular life, which is kind of cool. So what we're doing at this year's event that is, we didn't do last year. Actually, a lot of this we didn't do last year.
Yeah.
But this year, we're bringing Ron Tite. And if you go to heroicpublicspeaking.com/live, you'll see a little bit about Ron there. Ron is going to do a special session on how everyone is a comedian, or at least should be. He's a professional comedian and one of the most working professional speakers in the business. So not only is he just a funny speaker, he's a professional comedian and has done extraordinary work. So he's going to do a session specifically on that to help you with humor, finding humor. Where is it? Because you're not going to find it underneath the table. You've got to learn how to sculpt it, how to design it. So in any event, moving on.
So Stagecraft. Second was video craft. Third is content creation. Fourth is rehearsal, this thing that we aren't taught how to do. I once said, okay, now go and rehearse that. And the student said to me, how do I do that?
Yeah, because that's not something you learned in grammar school, high school, college. If you have an engineering degree, you certainly didn't learn how to rehearse. There's no reason you would know how to rehearse, because then what happens is you try a little rehearsal and then you go perform and you try to recall what you did in rehearsal. And as a result, you're really stiff and you have trouble finding what you were going to do. And you go, rehearsal doesn't work. I'm better if I just wing it. But in some mediums, if you just wing it, you will miss the opportunity to change the world in some way.
And you will never get better.
And you won't get better. Because when preparation meets improvisation, then you have spontaneous, authentic moments that live in the hearts and minds of every single person in that room. So we need to be really well prepared. And we teach a protocol for rehearsal. It is a 7-step process that we learned when we were doing our masters, that other trained actors know, and that you will learn as well. So you know exactly how to do your rehearsal anytime you have a new opportunity in front of you, so you don't have that anxiety of, okay, I know I've got to do this thing. I kind of know what I want to talk about. How the heck do I put it together?
I guess I'll start with the slides.
The slides. I'll do the slides, and then I'll go through some things I'd say in my head a few times. And then when I go up and do it, I'll look at the slide and I'll go, okay, now I know where I am, and I'll use that as my notes. And that's often how it's done. I did that too back in the day, 15 years ago. I definitely did that and walked out of the room going, don't think that works. I gotta get better. Now, if you've got the gift of gab and you know what you're talking about and you're charming, you can get away with it. But you know you can be so much more, and that's where we're trying to take you. We're trying to take you past what you think you are capable of right now, because what's interesting about getting better is that when you get better, you see how much better you can get. That's what's amazing about getting better, is then you can see how much better you can get. So rehearsal, number 1 is table reads.
You sit, you work through it at a table. You don't worry about your movement yet. 2 is content mapping. You're still at the table, but we'll teach you how to work through transitions, beats, operative words, lists, parentheticals, how you look at the structure of your language and translate that from the written page to how it comes out your mouth.
And then blocking. This is the movement we were discussing earlier. So you need to know how to move powerfully, comfortably, easily, so you're not just wandering back and forth, which is, of course, the most common thing that people do on stage because they have energy and they don't know what to do with it or where to go. So they'll just wander here, wander back, wander there, wander back, wander there, wander back. And the audience is going. So do it with me. Go like, look over here, and then left, and then right. This is what the audience looks like when you're wandering back and forth. It's a little bit like a very slow tennis match.
But here's the thing. So often we're worried about the visuals and we think that's the slides. You are the visual.
Wow.
You are the visual. So how you stage it, what you do with your body, that's the most compelling visual you have. So we train you in blocking.
That's
staging.
right. So number 1 is the table work. Number 2 is the content mapping. Number 3 is the blocking, so that you look at all your material, whether it's written out or it's organized by bullet points and key points and stories, because of course you don't have to memorize everything you do. Absolutely. Well, like this is absolutely memorized. Every single thing we've done here today is memorized. Even the those are all memorized. We've scripted it. We've been working for 7 years on it. Okay, that's not true. So you see, the point is you don't have to script everything. But when you have your material, you can then start to stage it. And that's what your blocking is. You're staging your performance. So after you do your blocking, then
you get to improv.
Right.
Once you have the structure set, you know what you're speaking on, you know how to move through it, you know how to physically move through it, then you get to improv and edit.
Yeah, which is often the most exciting part and also the messy part. That's what, if you're not used to rehearsal, you might get frustrated when you're rehearsing and it's not perfect. What the performer knows is it's rarely ever perfect, ever. But rehearsal is about the messiness. It's just about making choices and seeing what works and what you can improve. That's all it is. And after you've done this improv and editing portion, then you bring in an invited audience, very specific people, very few people, to perform certain parts of the presentation for them to get specific feedback. And you need to know how to get feedback. That's very important, especially if they're not professionals trained in coaching you. Because most people know what they like and don't like, but they may not know why they don't like it.
Or how to make it better.
And then the advice they give you might be driven by their own agenda, knowingly or otherwise, and then you get off track. So it's important to be able to get the right information from them. And then it's open rehearsal.
So invited rehearsal and then open rehearsal, where you invite some people that might be in your target audience and do often a whole run through or large sections of your presentation, so that you get the experience of working with an audience, seeing, okay, what's working? Am I getting the feedback that I want from them? Am I getting the responses that I want from them? Does this function in the way that I want it to?
Exactly right. So then you move into tech. And that's when you make sure all your tech elements are perfect, that you know that, when your tech will get to the point when you work with us that it's so good, you don't look at the screen. You know exactly what's up there all the time. And you certainly never point at it. You know that the remote is a 360-degree beam, some kind of magic beam that it sends out. So you don't point it at the slide. You don't even need to point it at your computer. It just becomes an extension of you. So let's say these glasses were the remote. When you're working, you have this remote in your hand. You're moving a slide. Boom, 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 boom. You notice, okay, boom, moving a slide if you use slides. So it becomes an extension of you, and it's seamless. So that's where we're going to go. And that's number 5, which is performance. You have a pre-show ritual, which will teach you how to do with a warm-up, and then how to work well with an organizer. Incredibly important.
And all of the tech people there, a stage manager if you have one. You need to know how to work with those people who are there at the venue, because they can serve you well or not, and our job is to serve them well too.
And a big part of what you'll develop when you work with us is stage awareness. And that's the 3rd key point to the actual performance. Showing up and being aware of what's happening at all times. If there is an alarm going off and you don't realize it's going off, the audience might get a little concerned. Or if you realize it's going off but you don't address it, the audience gets a little bit anxious. So you are in control of the room hopefully, you are the ringmaster and you take leadership when you're in that position. So the awareness is so key. You'll get to the point where you'll be able to watch yourself while you're performing. It's pretty extraordinary. You actually can step outside of yourself and watch yourself be in the moment. It may not happen right away, but it does happen. And if you get off the stage and you have no idea what happened, then you need a lot more work because you're not yet aware of what's happening in the moment. The professional will get off the stage and know exactly what happened. They'll be able to say, about 22 minutes in, I did X, and I found that it worked or it didn't work, or I need to. So that kind of awareness is something that you develop through this work.
And then you learn how to own the room.
Yeah.
This is the leadership piece that Michael was just referring to. How is it to make the audience feel so confident in you that you can guide them? You aren't thrown off track by what happens in the room. And there may be plenty of things. It could be that a waiter drops a tray. It could be that somebody stands up and heckles you. But if you own the room, the entire audience feels safe under your care, quite literally. Remember, we're there to serve.
Yeah. Remember, we're there to serve. It's never about us. It's always about them. And that leads us into creating intimate moments. I mean, that is your job. So in rehearsal, you're attempting to create intimate moments, but there aren't often very many people there in your rehearsal process until you get to open rehearsal. But you don't have open rehearsals every day. It's not like you can bring in 20, 50 people every day for 3 months. You're going to have a couple times when you have that rehearsal. What happens sometimes when we get into performance is we get nervous. So we are uncomfortable creating intimate moments, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, allowing ourselves to be transparent, to be open, and to show and share emotion. And sometimes that's just standing on a stage, not saying a word, which is very difficult for many people. But you will get to the point where you could stand there for 15 minutes, for 20 minutes, and look at every single person in that audience and have the absolute knowledge, the confidence that you are delivering on your promises. And that takes a lot of courage, but it's very powerful. And that's what we're going for. We're going for power in your work, not manufactured, not pushed, not arrogant, but power that comes from a place of security. And then finally, managing the post-show cycle. Because after you perform, it can be very intense. Mm-hmm. You know, we're very fortunate. We have each other. We can get, we get to debrief and we get to laugh and play and crawl up on the floor in a fetal position. We can do whatever. We have each other to support. But sometimes you're often alone, and that can be difficult when you're giving speeches, because even if you do a really bang-up job, which is a good job, sometimes you still feel lonely afterwards because it was such an intense experience. You were with all these people, and then the next thing you know, you're just by yourself in your hotel room if you're giving a speech on the road somewhere, and it's lonely. And you start questioning yourself, and we want to make sure that you know how to manage that post-show cycle so that you don't get into that place. So now is a great time to put in questions if you have them. And I want to remind you that the Heroic Public Speaking Live, if you joined us late, is coming up February 15, 16, 17 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. If you live on the East Coast, you are going to be very happy to be in Fort Lauderdale, Florida in February. That is why we hold it there, because we live on the East Coast and it is miserable outside. It is freezing and I don't see any value in this cold. But we can meet in Florida. But here's the thing. Right now, we are finishing up the super early bird price of $9.95. The regular price is $29.99. So just under $3,000 is the regular price for a ticket. We do a super early bird because we're still ahead of the game. It's still 2015. That super early bird goes away tomorrow at 7 p.m. and it goes up $500 to $14.95. Now, you can pay $14.95. You can wait if you want. That is going to be available, I think, for about 3 or 4 weeks before it goes up to the regular price or the next higher price. But of course, I don't know why you would wait when you can get it for $9.95. There are also, when you go to the page, you'll see that there is a refund policy, so that if you do sign up right now, then there are different times where you can still get either all or some of the money back as you get closer to the event. This gives you a little bit more flexibility, but still allows you to lock into this lower rate. If you have questions that you want to ask privately, offline, send an email to questions@michaelport.com. That's questions@michaelport.com. You will get an answer straight away. You'll get to talk to Dan, who is our director of admissions. He can answer any question that you have. Of course, if there's some other way that you want to work with us, you can certainly let us know, and Dan will connect us together. But this event is a very special event. I have a rule. Remember the rule?
No.
Yeah, I have a rule. If anyone who is at the event puts anyone down, says anything that diminishes someone else, or is hypercritical, they are asked to leave immediately. This is one of the safest places that you will ever go. We are very protective of you. We feel that our job is to take care of you and protect you when you're doing this work, because it can be emotionally invigorating. And if it is emotionally invigorating, you need people around you who support you, who are there for you, who you can trust. And we do everything in our power to deliver on our promises. And our promise to you is that we can help you be a better public speaker. And we make that guarantee 100%. We can't promise that you'll become the next Martin Luther King Jr. as a speaker, but we can promise you that you will be better than you are today, noticeably and remarkably. And when I say remarkably, it means that other people will remark on your improvement. And that is the kind of result that both of us are going for. Anything you want to say?
See you in Florida.
We'll see you in Florida. Wow. That's exciting. So that's it. Peace. We did exactly what we said, exactly an hour. Look at that. I love it when a plan comes together. And again, if you have any questions, we'll take them offline at questions@michaelport.com, questions@michaelport.com. If you want to call, you can do that too. You may not get a call back till tomorrow because the phone lines are dead. The operators are not standing by. But if you do want to call, we can, someone will call you back tomorrow. And the number for that is 414, get ready for it, 4-PORT, F-O-R-P-O-R-T. It's totally cheesy. 414 F-O-R-PORT. Bye for now. We thank you.
Thank you.